Thank you. Senator Heinrich.
Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, welcome. I've been very glad to see the funding from the Great American Outdoors Act begin to go to work over the last couple of years. But I'm deeply concerned about agency process bottlenecks that really frustrate our ability to get LWCF, Land and Water Conservation Fund projects done in a reasonable time frame. And I certainly recognize the importance of accurate and professional appraisals, but I don't understand why that process should take years, as it often now does. That was not the case in the past in these agencies, and it's not the case in the private real estate market, certainly. So what can we do to ensure that Land and Water Conservation Fund projects can be completed in a time frame that works both for the public but also for the landowners who engage in these transactions?
Thank you so much, Senator. It's nice to see you.
Good to see
Thank
you.
you for the question. So we're working with our LWCF bureaus and the Appraisal and Valuation Services Office to set up a comprehensive review that looks at the root causes of these delays, and that includes internal processes and external factors as well. We're happy to follow up with you as that moves forward, and we'll do what we can. I understand the frustration. And
so my hope is that we can get this to a place where the appraisals process can be done in a matter of months as opposed to years. You're familiar with the Elbar project in New Mexico. We specifically avoided working with the federal government in that transaction, other than the federal funding that came from Pittman-Robertson. But we didn't use LWCF dollars in that project because the time frame just would not allow for it. So we have to get to a place where we can do marquee projects that really, the kind of projects that the public really gets excited about, but on a time frame that works for these landowners.
thank you.
I want to ask you a little bit about Hardrock mine cleanup. As you know, in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, Congress finally authorized a program dedicated to abandoned Hardrock mine reclamation, something that's existed for abandoned coal mines for decades. We all know that bill didn't include funding for that program, but your department budget request includes $85 million in new funding for Hardrock cleanup, something I very much appreciate. But it directs it through other existing programs rather than through the specific program authorized specifically for this purpose. So I just want to ask, does the administration support funding for the dedicated Hardrock program authorized in the bipartisan infrastructure bill?
Yes, yes.
Great. We look forward to working with you on that. I think it's going to break new ground, and we're going to be able to do some really good projects that should have been addressed decades ago, and I look forward to working with you closely on that. The number of tribal historic preservation officers, or THPOs, has grown rapidly over the last couple of decades. Funding from the Historic Preservation Fund has not kept pace, as you know. More than 200 tribes have a historic preservation office, but each THPO receives only about $75,000 right now to support all the work that they do to review projects that impact tribal cultural sites, both on and off tribal land. How can we get the tribal historic preservation offices the resources that they need to fully protect their communities' sacred spaces?
Thank you for the question, Senator. And of course, I fully support the Tribal Historic Preservation Offices. It may be the only federal program that helps tribes to protect and conserve their cultural history and resources, so they're incredibly important. Our 2023 budget proposes an $8 million increase for those offices, and of course, we're always available to help support them in any way that we can.
Yeah, I hope this committee will look closely at this, and because we're spreading the same resources over more and more tribal THPO offices, and
Yes.
and it's not a sustainable approach right now. Secretary, as you are all too aware, American Indians and Alaska Natives living on reservations face violent crime rates up to 20 times those living off reservation. More than 80% of Native Americans will experience violence in their lifetime, and there are currently thousands of missing Indigenous people. So I want to ask you a little bit about BIA and how they set their law enforcement priorities, and specifically referencing a situation that we've had in New Mexico. Basically, why instead of focusing on this crisis that is truly a crisis, are limited BIA resources being used to enforce federal cannabis laws on reservations where cannabis has already been legalized by the sovereign tribe there?
Thank you for the question, Senator. And of course, I believe very strongly that we should respect tribal laws and work in partnership with tribes on their public safety priorities. And they know their communities far better than we ever will. Of course, this question also involves the authority and policy of the Department of Justice, and I respect that we have to have an administrative approach to this, so it's absolutely noted. We have been approached by tribes on this issue as well, and so it's something that that we are not ignoring.
I appreciate that, and I think this is a conversation that I look forward to continuing, because I just think it's a horrible misappropriation of focus at a time when we have such pressing needs. And obviously, in my state, the state has chosen to legalize cannabis. A number of tribes have followed suit. Whatever you think about that as a policy matter, we have such more important, pressing criminal needs in Indian country right now that we need to set our priorities appropriately. So thank you, Secretary, and my time is expired.